Hi everyone, I'm back again today with a video on the subject of inner work to encourage more people to dive into the inner work. And today I've got Sarah Slater, who is an art therapist who teaches all about the power of using the arts for healing, alchemizing, and empowerment. So Sarah, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So to start this discussion, I thought it would be interesting to hear your story in terms of, what was the catalyst to your inner work journey and a brief summary about what your journey has looked like.
Yeah, so in the inner work, that all started or really kicked into gear when I woke up to the narcissism around me, and it was a betrayal in my marriage that had really shook me and woke me up, and realized how badly I was people pleasing and tolerating, controlling, abusive people that don't have your best interests at heart. So, and realizing that you're surrounded by everyone, it changes your whole life when you wake up to that, and then starting your inner work of healing all those aspects that aren't really who you are. You were just, tolerating and putting up with things that probably, definitely should have called out at the time.
Mm. And
Mm.
so what were the main themes of your inner work journey? I know you mentioned narcissism, but obviously you faced yourself and you looked at yourself. So what are some of the themes that you had to work on?
Yeah, finding my voice. That was a big one. And because I'd suppressed it for so long, I was a really quiet person, and again would let a lot of things slide. And it wasn't, I really, when looking back, I really should have spoken up a lot more. So yeah, finding my voice was a huge one, and also recovering that people pleasing aspect as well. They were the main things in healing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it seems to be a main theme for a lot of women because obviously we've been programmed that way, right? Like it goes back generations. It's not just us. And so that's why the healing feels so heavy sometimes because it's, you're literally healing what's in your DNA at this point, right? Because it's ancestral. Um,
Yes.
so can you tell us about how you actually discovered that using the art was helping you a lot in your healing journey?
Yeah, it was I'd already been painting previously, but it wasn't until in the midst of chaos of, confrontations with me discovering like what I was dealing with and then calling it out, and it's in those early days that you're trying to manage your emotions, and instead I would pull myself away into my private space, and all of a sudden I'd write a poem to transform what I was feeling and get it up and out of me. And I surprised myself because I felt really good after it, almost straight away. Like it really rewired, and I was so when I kept doing that, it just eventually over time I would be able to handle a lot more than what I used to be able to
Mm.
in,
Yeah.
emotion, with your emotional reactions to things. And it really does change how you're feeling from interacting with someone who's abusive, to be able to realize that you're not really the problem.
Mm.
It's their projections and it's got nothing to do with you. So there's a lot of realizations with doing the poems and really being honest as
Mm.
well, but transforming it into something else. So then it lessens the pain and the impact that
Mm.
it has. And I think when you're consistent with it and find your rhythm, then that really does help. It really does.
Yeah, it is really a process of alchemizing,
Mm.
alchemy.
Mm-hmm.
So I can actually attest to that because I've tried some of Sarah's poetry prompts,
Mm-hmm.
and we can talk about it, but until you actually try it for yourself, you're not going to fully understand
Oh,
because you're not
absolutely.
going to have the visceral experience of what it does. But yes, it's exactly
Mm-hmm.
what it does. It puts you back into, it reconnects you to your body, to your emotions, especially when you're trying to heal from narcissistic abuse. you've been so confused and abused for so long that you actually become disconnected with your emotional body. So the
Yes.
process of reconnecting to that and, naming those emotions like is actually really powerful. And I know that you actually came up with something called the ripple effect. Like you've got a wheel of emotion that you're using. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I created the chart because righteous anger wasn't on most of the charts I came across when you look at emotion wheel. So I called it the emotion ripple effect chart because I see it more as the emotional body as water. And it's complex, like you have more than one emotion that you're experiencing. So, and specifically for narcissistic abuse, I tried to make the chart to cover most of the emotions, but there is, because it's a ripple, there is space on the edges where you can write your own emotion that comes up for you, so you can personalize it. It definitely helps, and in the workbook I've added in charts of your body and where in your body you are feeling certain emotions, so then you can move forward and know how to release that stuck energy that's not meant to stay on you for very long, because obviously then health problems start if we suppress and hide these, how we're really feeling. And art's great because you can get creative with how you're feeling, and it's still your story. If you don't want to share certain parts or other things, you will know what it means deep down, what you've created. But I think it's a really good form of releasing and healing and transforming it. It really is magical alchemy.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because when I started my inner work journey, I actually started using what I call a wheel of emotion. I found it on the
Mm.
internet, and I was very powerful. So I completely hear what you're saying, and I agree with it. And I've actually done some videos on this channel in my inner work series, because just the process of reconnecting to each emotion and feeling where you feel it in your body and what needs that emotion is trying to, speak to you. And so it's a process of reconnecting to the subtle energies. And
Mhm.
that process actually, like reconnecting to your energy, makes you understand what's happening when you are going through narcissistic abuse, because you're going to be able to feel like the energy trying to be siphoned from you. And there's just so much to this, right? It's actually,
Mhm.
it like what we're talking about is so simple, but it actually does so much energetically.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
I think the main thing is that cognitive dissonance, that where you're, because it's such a mentally abusive interactions, that you feel so mashed up in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first area to look at to start healing, so you can start making decisions and moving forward and reconnecting to your body, becoming grounded.
Yes.
And yeah, art plays a really good role in that.
Mm. And there's actually, neuroscience backing this, right? So do you want to tell us a
Yes.
bit about that?
Yeah, there's a great book called Your Brain on Art: How the Art Transforms Us by Susan Magsamen and Ivy Ross.
Mm-hmm.
And they do studies, and it's gaining momentum. People are sharing snippets from the book, and I think that's really great because it shows how art, even walking into museums, affects our brains and the rewiring that can go on. And that's the main focus to heal, right? So you want to, yeah, poetry is fantastic for rewriting new narratives in your brain. So you're changing the story and putting it into something else, so it doesn't affect you like it used to. And
Mm-hmm.
it's almost instant, but you will find your own rhythm. And painting's great, obviously, if you're lost for words and you're really struggling, that you just get images and symbols out of your body and onto concrete form outside of you that you can
Mm-hmm.
reflect upon, and then feel what the emotions that come up, and then you can probably go on to writing poems. It's
Mm-hmm.
what you find. There's so many art forms for healing. It's what works for you, and
Yeah.
you will know that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't draw for shit, so painting is out of the equation. But
But
poetry
that's
really speaks to me because I love the words and it
oh,
really works.
yeah.
But my daughter, my 11-year-old daughter, actually, from a very young age, she started drawing, and she loves to draw little people. It's always little people because she actually builds a story. And as she draws, she's talking to herself. And what I've noticed by observing it is that she's actually reenacting some stuff that's happening, at school or in her friendship or at home. And it's like a form of therapy. And because I've found you now, it's actually making me understand what she's doing, but she was doing it completely intuitively. So she knows deep down that it's actually what she needs. And it's just amazing to see it in action, to observe her actually doing it. It's her form of meditation.
Yeah, and that's really good. She's found that, and we can learn a lot from kids as well and what they do and how they handle things.
Yes,
And finding, yeah, the arts is really important and it should be carried on and encouraged a lot more.
especially in school. Yeah,
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 especially in school. Yes, definitely.
yeah. Um,
Hmm.
so I was hoping to focus a bit more on anger and specifically righteous anger. So, as women, we've been so programmed to, almost be scared of the emotion of anger. And there's a lot of um, information out there, making you think that all forms of anger are wrong. And I personally make a big distinction between reactive anger and righteous anger. And from personal experience, I found that reactive anger is obviously very depleting. It's very disempowering. But on the other side, righteous anger, which is really standing firm and defending yourself, is extremely empowering. And I know that you've actually experienced that as well. So I was hoping you could tell me more about this and how you've used the art to help you with specifically with anger and reconnecting with anger.
Yeah, righteous anger is probably on top of the list for empaths to
Yes.
express. And I know it's really hard because it's not in our nature to be or angry and even in our own nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a really good book, Dodging Vampires, and in that she mentions Dr. George Solomon, and he says our moral system has its own immune system. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
to suppress that righteous anger, you're going to create health problems. It has to be expressed and released out of your system. And I 100% agree. Righteous anger, it's a healthy form of anger because you can get on the other side of the spectrum unhealthy anger that drains your body. And
Mm-hmm.
you'll notice the difference when
Mm-hmm.
you express this anger and you've lost yourself or you're stressed or depressed from it. It's an unhealthy anger response, but a healthy anger response, the righteous anger, it'll fire you up and it will give you energy. And there's a huge difference. And you'll surprise yourself once you discover this within. And it's justified. It's really justified, especially through narcissistic abuse. You
Mm-hmm.
have to, when you're ready, call it out. When you've done your inner work and you can express this righteous anger. The arts is really good to get to that point. So you're doing it in your space first with transforming that anger onto into a poem or a painting or however whatever art form you choose, and then it over time with consistency I find it creates that emotional intelligence to then be able to express righteous anger to the person or people who are mistreating you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, it's really, really important. There's a great movie called Night Bitch,
Mm-hmm.
and it's similar with her anger, frustrations inside. And I think her mother had passed away, but she was questioning how did my mother express this anger inside? And then in the movie, she uses her art form to help her with that expression.
Also, it's about
So
art as well, the movie.
yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
amazing. Yeah,
yeah.
okay,
So
I'll
she.
put all the links. We're talking a lot about books and movies, so I'll put all the links in the description of the video because knowledge is power and knowledge shared is power multiplied. Um,
Yes.
so I love that. With anger, what helps me with anger as well is with righteous anger is understanding that righteous anger comes from a love for myself. So it's a love of the people you're defending, whether it's yourself or your kids or whoever.
Mm,
It doesn't come out of hatred towards someone else. And I think that's the problem. That's a distinction that people need to make, especially empaths. You're not
mhm.
hating anyone. You're not, you need to actually defend yourself. You can't love someone more than you love yourself.
Yeah, the great way of looking at it is, if you have children and you're protecting them, of course you're going to get angry if someone is coming, mistreating your kids or
Yeah.
threatening your kids and their innocence, and you're going to use that righteous anger to protect them, and they look up to you and watch that, and that is it all follows. But yeah, it's really good to express it. It's a healthy form. And like you said, people can take it the wrong way, but it doesn't matter, because I used to be in that mindset. And I think that's part of keeping quiet is I don't want to upset anybody, keep the peace and all that carry on. And it's like, no, you're crossing the line here. You're taking it too far. I'm gonna say something. So,
and what's fascinating though is that very often the protector, so the anger to protect your kids is strongly activated, or protecting anyone else. But when it comes to protecting yourself, that's where I've struggled more, which is so fascinating, right? Because it's this concept of like, I think we understand that we have to protect others, but it's protecting ourselves. That's the programming, especially as women, where, our voice have been so shut down, I guess, that, it's just so hard, like sometimes to reconnect with that part of ourselves.
Yeah, especially if you've since childhood been like that and you've been surrounded by very strong egos and they've really kept you quiet. And when you've grown up and then it's for years, you're programmed like that. So to break it as an adult, like when you're nearly 40, it's hard work. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. It's so worth it in the end.
And I know that recently you had a prompt specifically about releasing anger, and you were recommending to listen to specific music. So finding music that's, a high beat, or like where you can actually channel that anger to help you a bit, for people who, can't connect with that emotion. Because I know there are people actually who cannot feel anger at all.
Yeah, so in the prompts I offer through the magical art therapy, there is suggested inspirational songs to listen to, and with those beats you can start to hear it in your head if you listen to it a couple of times, and then find your flow. If you've never written poetry before, it definitely helps or inspires you, or we connect to songs emotionally, and you can use your favorite song or the ones that hit deep inside or move something, like only you will know the songs. But I have suggested songs, and it does get that rhythm going, because I find the secret with poems is in the rhythm. And I feel like everyone has their special rhythm that they express at the time. And also at the time, the best time to transform it is when you're feeling that emotion. Sometimes you'll sit down and go, right, I'll write a poem about being angry, but you're not actually angry at that time. And the more impactful writing poetry is when you're actually angry and ready to move it. That's some of the best work comes out of, being in that state. And why mainly poetry, painting, all art forms really exist is because we're transforming this stuff out of us. And sometimes it gets to be really beautiful and moving for others in other ways that we don't know.
And also, one thing I want to share is that it doesn't have to be perfect, right? I mean, obviously,
No.
I'm not a poet, so I love writing, I love words, I love the rhythm, especially writing through music. But I don't really make things rhyme, or like it's just it's whatever flows out of me. So that's the power of alchemy. Like it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And it's your process and what comes out. Yeah.
Yeah. What else did I want to touch on? Yeah, so one thing that I want to touch on is the fact that I feel also with art therapy is that this creativity that you're tapping into, and especially in this world where it's just become so, we're all living in a rat race. We've become disconnected from nature and from our divinity. I feel like reconnecting with that creative aspects is actually a way to reconnect with our spirit. There's a huge spiritual element to this, I feel. And I feel like that's why it's so powerful. But I was hoping you could also tell me what you think about that.
Yeah, because it's creativity connects, like you said, with the spiritual, and we have spiritual bodies, and I find that when I because painting and poetry can be a little different for me, it might not be for everybody else, and I find when I'm painting, you hit that timelessness, and that's real strong spiritual connection, flow state they call it, going on, and it makes time disappear, and it feels deeper than the act itself sometimes. So yeah, it's definitely spiritual experience as well that can help you and also influence your dreams, and yeah, a lot of things.
Yeah, it's a form of meditation, essentially, what you're saying.
Yeah. It's funny, with poetry, I found it was more of a wordy thing, obviously. Getting the words out of your head and changing it to something else. But painting, it's a more spiritual act. I mean, they're all art forms obviously are spiritual, but it's that key for everyone. What are you doing when time disappears?
Yes. Yeah, and at the end of the day, inner work to me is, we're transforming, we taking our power back, and we're reconnecting with our divinity. So whatever works, whatever forms work. And so for you to find that painting actually brings you into that state of meditation is amazing.
Yeah, yep. And if you're unsure, if you haven't hit that yet, and you'll know because it'll be hours have passed and it felt like 5 minutes, and you try all different art forms if you haven't experienced it yet. Try a lot of different things, even gardening. Like there's so many ways of being creative in cooking, or it's wherever that time really does disappear. That's your thing.
Yeah, another art form that I love is dancing as well, personally, because it helps me reconnect to my body and move my body, and it's another way of alchemizing as well.
Yeah, dancing's
But what
great.
I love about what you offer is that, which is so unique, to be honest, I haven't seen, anyone else on social media offer this, is that often like inner work can feel very dry, and, it's like a step-by-step process, and you're facing yourself and you're facing your shadows, and it can feel very heavy at times. And so using the arts and creativity injects, it allows you to zoom out, and it injects a little bit of fun in the process as well.
Oh yeah, you surprise yourself sometimes when you're writing poetry. Even you get a little cheeky, if you like, and yeah, you can add fun to it. Absolutely, it definitely, it's so healing. And when you add that fun aspect in it, compared to other ways to heal, it does make a difference. I think it more, and you're relaxing into your body then when you're enjoying it at the same time, even though it's a heavy thing to process. And art can change as well, what art form you choose. We feel different every day, so one like program system can't go, forever and ever and ever, and you feel like you're still stuck, and I'm still healing, I'm still trying to process what's happened to me, and it becomes a really, really long journey. And for some, really struggle. Everyone is different, and it's all very complex and layered. But if you haven't tried art, I really do suggest trying the arts and start from there and work your way into finding what you like doing.
Yeah, so such a good point that it's just so individual as well, this journey, and we have to try different things. And if we get stuck, we try something else. What matters is that we keep trying.
Yeah.
And I know initially you mentioned that basically the process of finding the arts through and healing and alchemizing through painting and poetry allowed you to build emotional resilience and emotional intelligence. So can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, I think it's just from my personal experience that I realized, and when you're in the early days confronted with someone with narcissism, you take, I would used to take everything to heart and personally and really get affected really badly and like so confused in my head of the crazy what I'm hearing and dealing with and the gaslighting. And so I guess your emotional reactions obviously feed then the person who is being abusive, and you're not realizing that at the time. You didn't know what you were dealing with, and it wasn't until waking up to what you were dealing with and realizing how they feed off you that then you start that inner work, that journey for emotional intelligence, where you they suggest grey rocking, and I think initially, if you haven't done as much inner work, that is safe to use, but not to use forever and ever and ever in a day. Because if you block your true emotional reactions, you're obviously going to get sick. It's not healthy to do that. Eventually, you're going to want to express yourself from it all. And so finding that process, obviously for me it was the poetry, but finding that process to manage your emotional reactions to then be able to express differently. It's through that consistent work you develop that emotional intelligence, and you'll know within, you go, it's such a learning and a growth part of who you are as a person. You definitely do change, but for the better. Definitely for the better.
Yeah, which is the whole point of inner work, right? We want to we want our life to be better. We want to feel better. We want to feel better on the inside, and it reflects on the outside. But what you mentioned about using your voice and calling things out, and not just using grey rocking with narcissists, is basically what we've discussed with Dr. George Simon, who I interviewed a few weeks ago, who's a clinical psychologist specializing in narcissism. And he's also saying that, like, you actually have to call people out on their behavior. And it's such a nuanced, obviously, it's a nuanced conversation. It depends on the situation. It depends on how you feel in the moment. But you shouldn't be using that consistently as an excuse not to stand up for yourself, because your job is also to find that voice and use it. And that's a muscle. It takes practice. You actually have to start using it, and you might get it wrong and you might not say the right thing. You just keep going. It doesn't matter. There's this quote that I love that says, speak the truth speak the truth even if your voice shakes. And I think it's just so relevant for this conversation, because it doesn't matter how you go about it. You try and you keep building that muscle until you actually will come to a place where you feel so confident and you can very firmly and calmly say things because you found your voice and authority.
Yeah, that's exactly what I went through as well. It's I realized in the early days it's so hard. It's so hard. They really do. When you've been in that dynamic, and dealing with narcissism, it's so hard not to take it to heart. But when you have an understanding of what you're dealing with, it helps. And even when I was in the early days of changing, I still got caught out, and I knew I'd quickly lost myself, and I had to ground myself a little and go, damn it, because you see that smirk and it's like you got caught out. And when you're learning all these things, you're like, right. So yeah, it is a slow build, like building that muscle, like you said. And it's worth it, because you eventually find this new confidence that you have inside of you.
Yeah. And inner work, to me, it's a two-step process. There's the knowledge first that you need to gather to expand your awareness. And, I know that's why, we both love reading books. And also that's why you're writing an ebook on narcissism, because you do need that level of understanding first, like you said about seeing the smirk and understanding and feeling like what's going on. That's paramount. That's number one. And then using the arts to heal is the second part, which is the embodiment, which is, reactivating your power from the inside, shedding the programming, the intellectual programming, or the programming that you have in your cells, the programming of behavior. So, I love that what you offer is dual, because you also actually have so much knowledge about narcissism, that you're able to understand it on such a deep level and such a nuanced level.
Yeah, they say, you know, the quiet person is the one to watch,
Yes.
as you know. And I think when we were in that too quiet stage, we weren't calling anything out, but we still observing. We knew what was going on. We just still kept the peace, you know. So we're watching patterns repeat and the pattern of people's behaviors. And when that happens, you're learning everything about how narcissism operates in people and their manipulative ways, the gaslight, everything just connects really quickly when you start reading the books about them, and you're just like, oh, yep, like you have a deeper understanding. But more than that, you've got that personal experience. What for me, it was like 20 years plus.
Yeah.
It's a long time. So you're going to see a lot of patterns and a lot of how they operate. Even now, I'm really like quickly acknowledge it, and it's amazing just how they operate. And they all very similar, use the same program, but yeah, now to be able to have that confidence to call it out is what's needed, I think, more than we can't do grey rock forever. People need to be held accountable, and that's that calling out. And you know, you can do it in whatever's right for you. So however it comes across, it's gonna be your energy behind the words that's going to be more impactful. And when you're calling it out in that, whether or not they're ready for it, that's not on you to worry about. But it's been called out. It's been called out. Eventually things, you know, happen.
I mean, sweeping things under the rug and pretending it's not there has never worked. It's never, it's never be helpful. Like, I know that in my family of birth, it was like that. You know, we pretend that it's all good when it's actually really not. And we tiptoe around the narcissist. And so it's, we have to be very careful about that. And also we shouldn't fear. When you actually come into your power and you're able to stand up for yourself, like there's nothing to fear. You are, protected, especially if you're deeply connected from within, you are protected.
Yeah, I will mention, I had a lot of talks with God about what I was dealing with and knowing how to move. So like you said, you've got to be safe, you've got to know yourself, you've got to know what you're dealing with and how you're going to approach things, and building that relationship with God definitely helps. And you can then know how to move forward with certain people, because not everyone's the same, not everyone reacts the same. It's, you don't want to put yourself in danger at all.
Yes.
At the same time.
Yeah, that guidance will protect you. Yeah. That's amazing. Is there any other word of encouragement, of guidance that you want to end with?
Yeah, go pick up a paintbrush or pen and paper, and release what's feeling heavy on you, and that's been on your mind for a really long time and you can't shake it. Just try something new. Your brain doesn't like when it's trying something new sometimes, but that's because it's it's a chance for it to rewire itself and heal. So do something you haven't done before in your healing, and you might be shocked. I know it's just making that decision, which it's hard because we're in that cognitive dissonance, right? But it's just give yourself that little push and go, okay, I'm going to try this and see what happens or where it goes.
That's amazing. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for coming on and sharing such a unique perspective on healing. I love it. I had never tried that before, using the arts to heal, and it's been amazing trying your poetry prompts especially. So I can attest that it actually is really powerful.
Thanks for having me.
That's okay. And I'll leave all the links for you guys to find Sarah and her prompts. And I'll also leave the links to the books that she mentioned in the description of this video. Thanks for watching. Bye, everyone.
Bye.